Emma stood at the edge of the cliff, her toes curling over the rough stone as she gazed out at the churning sea below. The wind whipped her hair around her face, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. Behind her, the old lighthouse stood sentinel, its light sweeping across the darkening sky. She closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of depression settling over her like a heavy blanket. It had been her constant companion for years, ebbing and flowing like the tides below. Today, it threatened to pull her under. "Emma?" a voice called out, barely audible over the crashing waves. "Emma, are you up here?" She turned to see Jack climbing the winding path, his brow furrowed with concern. He was breathless when he reached her, his eyes scanning her face. "I've been looking everywhere for you," he said, reaching out but stopping short of touching her. "Are you okay?" Emma shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Jack. It's too hard." Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. He had his own battles with anxiety, knew the weight of carrying an invisible burden. "Can I sit with you?" he asked softly. When Emma nodded, they both settled onto the grass, legs dangling over the edge of the cliff. For a long while they sat in silence, watching the sun sink lower on the horizon. "I know it feels impossible sometimes," Jack finally said. "But you're not alone in this, Emma. I'm here, always." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "How do you do it?" she whispered. "How do you keep going?" Jack was quiet for a moment, considering. "I think of it like that lighthouse," he said, nodding towards the structure behind them. "Some days the fog is so thick I can barely see it. But I know it's there, steady and strong. And I know that eventually the fog will lift." He turned to look at her, his eyes soft. "You're my lighthouse, Emma. Even on my darkest days, you help guide me home." Emma felt something stir in her chest, a warmth that began to push back against the cold grip of depression. She reached out, intertwining her fingers with Jack's. "Maybe we can be each other's lighthouse," she said. Jack smiled, squeezing her hand. "I'd like that." As the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Jack by her side, she felt strong enough to face whatever storms might come. They stood together, hand in hand, and made their way back to the lighthouse. Its beam cut through the gathering darkness, a reminder that even in the blackest night, there was always a light to guide them home.